Power doesn't start in the gym, the office, or the spotlight. It begins in the mind. Before you lift a weight, make a sale, or speak to an audience, there's a decision you make internally, who you believe yourself to be. The difference between those who remain average and those who rise to greatness isn't the opportunities they get, it's the identity they choose. Every transformation starts from that invisible shift in belief, that quiet decision that says, I will no longer be who I was yesterday. When you begin to see yourself as powerful, your behavior begins to follow. You start to walk differently, speak differently, and act with intent. The world doesn't shape your identity. Your identity reshapes the world's perception of you. When you want to become unrecognizable in just 1 week, you must stop chasing the illusion of massive external change and start mastering the inner dialogue that runs your life. The words you repeat to yourself, the story you tell, and the energy you project are the foundation of your transformation. If you continue to see yourself as someone who's struggling, the world will reflect that back to you. But if you begin to identify as someone powerful, someone capable, calm, and certain, your choices begin to align with that vision. Identity isn't about pretending, it's about remembering what you've always been capable of. It's peeling away every doubt, excuse, and limitation until all that remains is truth. The first step toward this kind of transformation is awareness. Pay attention to your thoughts and behaviors because they reveal the identity you've unconsciously built. Every time you say, I'm just not that kind of person, you're reinforcing the walls that keep you ordinary. Every time you allow comfort to win over growth, you confirm that your identity is tied to ease, not evolution. But when you begin to choose differently, even once, you start to loosen that old identity's grip. You start to realize that your future self isn't waiting to be found. It's waiting to be built through conscious action and relentless commitment. In these 7 days, you are not required to be perfect. You are required to be consistent. It's not about doing 1,000 things right. It's about doing one thing differently every day until it compounds. The moment you decide to wake up earlier, stay focused longer, or silence distractions, you take control of your narrative. This is where power begins to show itself, in the small, deliberate moments where you choose purpose over pleasure, direction over distraction, and progress over perfection. You are training your mind to obey your vision instead of your emotions. Becoming powerful doesn't mean becoming arrogant or dominant. It's not about being above others, it's about being above your former self. Real power is quiet. It doesn't need to announce itself because it's evident in your composure, your clarity, and your choices. When you stand in your truth, you stop performing for approval. You stop explaining your path to people who haven't earned a seat in your journey. This is when others begin to notice, not because you demand attention, but because you've stopped chasing it. Your energy changes, and energy is louder than words. The human mind is wired for comfort, and comfort is the enemy of transformation. To become unrecognizable, you must make discomfort your ally. Push yourself into spaces that challenge you, conversations that stretch you, and routines that demand your discipline. You'll notice resistance, fear, doubt, and hesitation, but those are not signs of weakness. They're signals that you're moving in the right direction. Growth never feels good while it's happening, but the moment you embrace it, you discover that discomfort is simply the body's way of preparing for strength. Every day you delay change, you reinforce the idea that you can't, but every time you act despite fear, you prove that you can. Power isn't built in a single breakthrough moment. It's built in the 1,000 small victories you claim when no one's watching. Waking up on time, following through on promises, choosing self-control over self-sabotage, these invisible wins compound into something extraordinary. Before you know it, you're not forcing yourself to act powerful, you're simply being it. You've reprogrammed your identity through evidence, not imagination. In this transformation, silence becomes your greatest weapon. Speak less and observe more. Let your actions speak volumes. The less you try to prove your power, the more undeniable it becomes. People will start to sense a shift in you, a deeper presence, a sharper focus, a stronger sense of purpose. They won't be able to describe it, but they'll feel it. That's the beauty of internal change. It radiates outward without needing validation. Your energy becomes magnetic, and you start to attract what matches your new standard. Certainty becomes the defining quality of your power. When you know who you are and why you're here, uncertainty loses its hold over you. You stop second, guessing your choices because they're rooted in purpose. You move differently, slower, calmer, more precise. You stop reacting to chaos and start creating direction. People may wonder what changed, but you'll know the truth. Nothing external shifted. You simply stopped being unsure. You replaced hesitation with conviction, and conviction is what makes leaders out of ordinary people. This week is not about proving anything to the world. It's about proving something to yourself, that in just 7 days, through focus, discipline, and identity, you can become someone you no longer recognize, not because you've turned into someone else, but because you've finally stepped into who you were always meant to be. Every single day presents a fork in the road, a moment of quiet decision where you choose between repetition and reinvention. Most people wake up and unconsciously repeat yesterday. The same thoughts, the same doubts, the same distractions. They move through the day on autopilot, reacting instead of creating. Reinvention, on the other hand, requires awareness. It asks you to stop drifting and start deciding. The power to become unrecognizable in 1 week doesn't come from a sudden burst of change. It comes from consistently choosing to disrupt your patterns. You begin to see that every day is a test, a chance to step toward who you want to be or fall back into who you've always been. The mind loves what's familiar, even when it's painful. That's why so many people stay trapped in old habits, not because they lack ambition, but because comfort feels safe. Repetition seduces you into believing that stability is progress, but in truth, it's stagnation disguised as peace. Reinvention demands that you become comfortable with uncertainty, that you trade predictability for growth. Each morning, when you open your eyes, you have to ask yourself whether you'll live by memory or by imagination. One keeps you bound to what's already been done. The other pulls you toward what's possible. The choice between repetition and reinvention isn't made once, it's made in every moment. It's made when you choose to stay quiet instead of speaking truth. It's made when you pick distraction over discipline. It's made when you promise yourself you'll change tomorrow. Every micro decision reinforces either your old identity or your emerging one. You don't suddenly transform overnight. You evolve by stacking intentional moments until your entire being reflects that new direction. When you understand that every choice is a declaration of identity, you stop living passively and start creating with precision. To become powerful, you must begin to see time differently. Most people underestimate what can happen in a single week because they keep postponing the moment of commitment. They think transformation takes years. But real transformation begins the second you stop lying to yourself about what you're capable of. A single week of complete focus, discipline, and self-awareness can create a level of momentum that most people never experience in a lifetime. What matters isn't how long it takes. What matters is how deeply you decide to show up each day. There's a quiet truth about reinvention that few people want to admit. It's uncomfortable. You'll feel resistance in your body, in your thoughts, even in the people around you. The world will try to pull you back into who you were because it recognizes that version of you. Familiarity will whisper, "Just take it easy." And fear will convince you that change is pointless. But every time you push through that resistance, you chip away at the old version of yourself. The discomfort you feel isn't a sign that you're failing, it's evidence that you're breaking through. Repetition makes you predictable, and predictability kills momentum. Reinvention, however, brings movement, and movement brings life. You begin to notice that the more you challenge yourself, the sharper your instincts become. You start to think faster, decide with more confidence, and move with purpose. You realize that change isn't about adding more, it's about subtracting what no longer serves you. Every time you let go of an excuse, a distraction, or a limiting belief, you reclaim energy that can be invested into growth. Reinvention is less about becoming someone new and more about removing everything that dulls your power. The first few days of choosing reinvention over repetition will feel exhausting. You'll want to quit because the old habits will scream for your attention. But if you persist through that chaos, something extraordinary happens, momentum takes over. The new behaviors that once felt forced begin to feel natural. The resistance weakens, the identity you're building starts to feel familiar, and suddenly you're no longer pretending to be powerful, you're embodying it. That's how transformation works, slowly at first, then all at once. Each morning becomes an opportunity to declare who you are becoming. When you open your eyes, you can either repeat the narrative of limitation or write a new one built on purpose. Reinvention is not about changing your environment first, it's about changing your intention. The same surroundings can produce completely different outcomes when you approach them with a renewed mindset. You begin to treat your time like currency, your energy like gold, and your attention like sacred ground. You stop chasing external validation because your focus shifts inward toward progress that no one else can see but everyone can feel. As the days pass, your awareness heightens. You start to notice how repetition hides in subtle places, in the way you talk about your goals, in the excuses you make, in the comfort you seek after minor discomfort. You also notice how reinvention rewards you through clarity, strength, and an undeniable sense of momentum. You realize that most people don't lack potential. They simply lack the courage to interrupt their patterns. You decide that courage will be your new standard, and you carry it into every decision you make. When you finally commit to choosing reinvention daily, you outgrow the need for permission. You no longer seek approval to evolve. You simply do it because you understand that every sunrise offers a chance to start over, to build a version of yourself that even you wouldn't have recognized a week ago. And as you continue to choose differently, the repetition fades, the reinvention deepens, and the person staring back at you in the mirror becomes undeniable proof that a single week of intentional living can alter the course of your entire life. Discipline is the silent architect of transformation. It's the foundation upon which every lasting success is built. Motivation, while thrilling and inspiring, burns out as quickly as it arrives. It's a spark, bright but fleeting. Discipline, however, is the steady flame that endures long after motivation fades. It's the difference between temporary excitement and permanent evolution. When you rely solely on motivation, you're dependent on emotion. When you master discipline, you take command of your direction regardless of how you feel. The most powerful people are not those who wait to feel ready. They are those who act even when every part of them resists. The reason most people fail to transform isn't because they lack ability. It's because they expect motivation to carry them through the moments when it disappears. They wait for the perfect mood, the right timing, or a sign from the universe to start. But those who achieve extraordinary growth know that discipline is not emotional, it's structural. It's a contract you make with yourself that doesn't depend on enthusiasm. You show up not because it feels good, but because it's aligned with who you want to become. Every time you follow through on a promise to yourself, you build trust with your own mind, and that trust becomes the most unshakable power you can possess. Discipline doesn't require loud declarations or external accountability. It lives in quiet choices, in the decision to get up when it would be easier to stay down, to focus when the world invites distraction, to persist when progress feels invisible. It's not glamorous, it's repetitive, uncelebrated, and often lonely, but that's exactly why it works. The process of discipline strips away everything superficial and leaves only the essential: effort, consistency, and focus. The more you practice it, the more you begin to crave structure over chaos, direction over impulse. Discipline becomes not a restriction, but a form of liberation. In a world obsessed with quick results, discipline is your greatest advantage. While others chase hacks, shortcuts, and instant gratification, you build endurance. You learn to enjoy the process instead of rushing to the outcome. You stop measuring success by speed and start measuring it by commitment. This shift in perspective changes everything. It redefines what power feels like. Discipline transforms effort into identity. It teaches you to do what must be done even when it no longer excites you, and that's when the magic begins. Because the moment you no longer rely on feelings to dictate your actions, you become unstoppable. Discipline builds character in the silence of routine. Each time you push through resistance, you strengthen a muscle in your mind that no external force can weaken. You learn that growth doesn't happen when things are easy. It happens when you choose consistency over comfort. The more disciplined you become, the less you need to negotiate with yourself. You stop entertaining excuses because your standard is no longer based on mood. It's based on integrity. You start to realize that discipline is not punishment. It's proof that you value your purpose enough to act on it daily. Every act of discipline is an act of self-respect. It's a message you send to your subconscious saying, I can trust myself to follow through. The people who appear the most confident are rarely those who talk about their goals the loudest. They're the ones who have trained themselves to do the work in private. Their confidence isn't inflated, it's earned. Each time they honor their commitment, their belief in themselves grows. That's why disciplined individuals exude quiet certainty. They don't need to convince anyone of their worth. Their actions speak for them. When you focus on discipline, you start to see motivation for what it truly is, a fleeting visitor. It's useful when it's present, but irrelevant when it's not. Motivation gets you started, but discipline keeps you moving when the excitement fades. You stop chasing emotional highs and start cultivating stability. The transformation from motivated to disciplined is the moment you move from dreaming to doing. That's when people begin to notice the difference in you, not because you're louder or faster, but because you've become consistent. Consistency is magnetic. It draws results to you without effort. Discipline also reshapes your relationship with time. You stop wasting hours waiting for the right moment and start realizing that every moment is right when it's aligned with your goal. The structure you create through discipline gives your life rhythm, and rhythm breeds focus. You begin to see that productivity isn't about doing more, it's about doing what matters repeatedly. The small, deliberate actions you take daily compound in silence, and before long, the person you used to be no longer exists. You've outgrown them through structure, not spontaneity. The irony of discipline is that the more you practice it, the freer you become. At first, it feels like restriction, like you're sacrificing comfort, entertainment, or pleasure. But soon you realize that those things were never freedom. They were distractions disguised as comfort. True freedom comes from self-control. It's the ability to direct your life instead of being dragged by impulse. Discipline gives you that power, the power to decide what deserves your energy and what doesn't. It's the quiet authority that separates the ordinary from the exceptional. In 7 days of disciplined living, you can achieve a clarity most people never reach in years. When you stop waiting for motivation and start moving with purpose, your entire energy changes. The way you speak, the way you think, the way you carry yourself, it all begins to shift. You become sharper, more intentional, and grounded in certainty. The noise of distraction fades, replaced by the rhythm of consistency. And while others chase temporary inspiration, you've built something far greater, a life driven by discipline, guided by purpose, and sustained by your own unbreakable commitment. Presence is not something you perform, it's something you project. It's the quiet strength that enters a room before you speak and lingers after you leave. True presence isn't about being loud, charismatic, or demanding attention. It's about commanding respect through calm certainty. The most powerful people don't have to announce themselves. Their energy does it for them. When you cultivate presence, you stop trying to impress and start to express. You no longer chase validation because you've learned that power is not found in how much you say, but in how deeply you mean what you do say. Presence is the physical expression of internal alignment. To build presence, you must first master stillness. Most people confuse noise with influence, but real influence is born from control over your emotions, your tone, and your reactions. When everyone else is moving frantically, the person who remains grounded becomes magnetic. Stillness doesn't mean passivity. It means you're so centered that external chaos cannot shake your focus. You listen fully, you observe deeply, and when you finally choose to speak, your words carry weight. Stillness creates authority because it shows you're not driven by impulse. You've replaced reactivity with intention. Your energy tells a story long before your words do. The way you stand, the way you make eye contact, the way you breathe, it all communicates confidence or insecurity. Presence begins in posture. When your shoulders are back, your chin is lifted, and your gaze is steady, you radiate assurance without uttering a single word. This doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from awareness. You understand that every gesture either amplifies or weakens your message. Your presence becomes a reflection of your self-respect. When you respect yourself, others instinctively respond with the same energy. Presence also requires silence. In a world that glorifies constant talking and endless opinions, silence is power. The one who can stay quiet the longest often controls the rhythm of any interaction. Silence shows that you're comfortable with yourself. You don't need to fill every pause or prove your worth through noise. When you speak only when it matters, people listen because they know your words are deliberate. The art of saying less but meaning more transforms your communication from ordinary to unforgettable. Silence, when used with purpose, can shift an entire conversation in your favor. Presence is deeply connected to self-awareness. You cannot project confidence externally if you are at war internally. When you understand your values, boundaries, and intentions, you stop being swayed by the opinions of others. Your presence becomes consistent because it's rooted in clarity, not approval. People can sense this. They can feel when someone knows exactly who they are and what they stand for. That kind of authenticity cuts through noise like a blade. You no longer try to mimic authority. You embody it naturally because authenticity carries more power than performance ever could. To strengthen your presence, you must also master emotional discipline. Emotions are powerful, but they can either amplify your influence or erode it. When anger, insecurity, or fear dictate your reactions, your presence weakens. But when you can experience those emotions without losing composure, you project control. Control is attractive. It signals strength. People trust those who remain calm under pressure. That trust is what presence ultimately creates, a quiet reliability that makes others feel secure in your steadiness. When your emotions serve your mission rather than sabotage it, your presence becomes unshakable. Attention is currency, and presence determines how much of it you command. When you walk into a space, your focus should be absolute. Put away distractions, silence your mind, and make the person in front of you feel like the only one that matters. This depth of attention is rare, and rare things are valuable. Whether you're in a meeting, a conversation, or on a stage, your full attention amplifies your influence. The more present you are, the more people feel seen. And when people feel seen, they respond with loyalty, trust, and respect. Presence turns ordinary interactions into meaningful moments. Presence is not about dominance, it's about alignment. You don't need to control the environment, you need to control yourself within it. When your thoughts, words, and actions are aligned, people feel coherence in your energy. There's no contradiction between what you say and how you behave. That integrity is magnetic. It gives your presence gravity, a pull that draws others in effortlessly. Alignment removes the need for performance because you're no longer pretending to be powerful, you are simply living powerfully. It's not something you do, it's something you are. One of the most overlooked aspects of presence is listening. Listening with full awareness without waiting for your turn to speak creates deeper influence than any speech could. When people feel truly heard, they open up, and in that openness, you gain insight, connection, and trust. Listening demonstrates that your confidence doesn't come from needing to dominate the conversation. It comes from being secure enough to give others space. The paradox is that the more you listen, the more impactful your words become when you finally speak. Presence isn't built through constant expression, but through intentional understanding. Presence is ultimately about energy management. Every day, you decide what kind of energy you bring into your environment. You can enter a room drained, distracted, and disconnected, or you can enter it grounded, focused, and powerful. Your energy sets the tone long before your voice does. It's not about being perfect, it's about being intentional. Presence requires awareness, silence, posture, emotional control, and alignment. When these elements work together, your presence becomes undeniable, not because you demand to be seen, but because the strength of your being cannot be ignored. Certainty is a kind of quiet conviction that lives deep inside you, a strength that doesn't shout but steadies everything around it. It's not built on arrogance or loud confidence, but on understanding who you are and what you stand for. When you develop certainty, you move through the world differently. You no longer need to explain yourself or defend your choices because your actions speak with clarity. It's not that you stop listening to others, it's that you stop being swayed by noise. You start trusting your inner compass more than the opinions that swirl around you. Certainty becomes a kind of peace, one that can't be bought, taught, or faked. To build certainty, you must first face uncertainty. It's in the moments of doubt, hesitation, and confusion that you learn what you actually believe in. Most people avoid these moments because they're uncomfortable, but discomfort is where conviction is born. Every decision you make without full clarity strengthens your ability to trust yourself. You begin to understand that certainty isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to move forward despite it. The people who seem the most confident aren't those who have all the answers. They're the ones who keep walking even when the path is foggy. Certainty grows when you stop outsourcing your self-worth. As long as your confidence depends on other people's validation, you'll always feel unstable. You'll question your abilities, second, guess your instincts, and dilute your potential trying to please everyone. But when you define your worth internally, you anchor yourself. You no longer seek approval because your direction is rooted in purpose, not applause. You understand that you're not here to be liked by everyone. You're here to live in alignment with what matters to you. Certainty frees you from needing permission to be who you are. Clarity is the foundation of certainty. You can't stand firm in your decisions if you don't know what you truly want. Most people lack certainty because they haven't taken the time to define their vision. They drift, reacting to life instead of designing it. But when you take the time to ask yourself, what do I truly value? What kind of person do I want to be? You create a filter for every choice you make. That clarity simplifies everything. Decisions become easier because you measure them against your principles, not your fears. The clearer you are, the less you hesitate. Certainty also requires consistency. You can't trust yourself if your actions constantly contradict your intentions. Every time you say one thing and do another, you weaken your belief in yourself. But when your actions align with your words, even in small ways, you start to build an internal track record of reliability. You prove to yourself that you follow through, that your word means something, and over time, that self-trust evolves into quiet confidence. You stop needing motivation because you know you'll show up regardless. Certainty isn't built in a single grand gesture, it's earned in daily discipline. When you live with certainty, you stop over-explaining. You stop trying to justify your boundaries or dilute your decisions for comfort. You realize that not everyone will understand your path, and that's okay. Certainty allows you to stand firm even when misunderstood. It doesn't harden you, it grounds you. It gives you the strength to listen without absorbing, to empathize without compromising, and to respond without reacting. People may call it confidence or strength, but what they're really feeling is your inner stability. It's the calm that comes from knowing you're guided by purpose, not pressure. Certainty is magnetic because it's rare. In a world filled with hesitation, those who move with conviction naturally draw attention. Others are drawn to people who know where they're going, even if they don't agree with their direction. It's not about dominance or superiority. It's about presence. Certainty carries a rhythm, a cadence, a tone that people feel before they even hear your words. When you speak, your voice doesn't waver. When you act, your movement is deliberate. When you make decisions, you do so with confidence that comes from deep alignment, not fleeting emotion. Developing certainty also means letting go of the need for guarantees. Most people delay action because they want certainty asterisk before asterisk they begin. They want to know it will work before they risk failing, but certainty doesn't come first, it's earned through movement. Each step you take, each challenge you face, each mistake you survive adds another layer to your confidence. You begin to realize that you can handle whatever comes next. You stop waiting for perfect conditions because you understand that certainty isn't given, it's generated through experience. Certainty thrives on simplicity. The more you simplify your life, your goals, your choices, your commitments, the more confident you become. Complexity breeds hesitation because it divides your focus. When you know your priorities, you know what to say yes to, and more importantly, what to say no to. You protect your time, your energy, and your peace because you understand their value. Certainty sharpens your awareness of what truly matters, and that awareness eliminates noise. Simplicity doesn't make your life smaller. It makes your direction sharper and your movement cleaner. At its core, certainty is self-ownership. It's the realization that no one is coming to save you, no one is responsible for your direction, and no one can define your worth except you. When you own your choices fully, the good, the bad, the uncertain, you reclaim your power. You stop playing small because fear no longer dictates your pace. You start to lead yourself with conviction, and people naturally follow. Certainty becomes not just something you carry, but something you embody. A quiet, steady force that turns doubt into direction and hesitation into momentum. Transformation is a deeply personal experience, not an external performance. It doesn't happen when others recognize your progress. It begins when you finally recognize yourself. Most people chase change so that others will see them differently. But the real power lies in seeing yourself differently first. You can spend years trying to prove your worth to the world, or you can spend one honest week facing the mirror and admitting what you've ignored, the potential, the strength, the resilience that has always been there. The journey of becoming unrecognizable is not about adding something new to yourself, but about uncovering what's been buried under fear, hesitation, and doubt. Personal transformation doesn't announce itself with grand gestures. It starts quietly, often in moments when no one is watching. It begins the day you decide you're done betraying your own standards. It starts when you keep a promise to yourself that you used to break. It's in the small acts, waking up early when you want to sleep in, speaking truth when silence would be easier, showing up when comfort tells you not to. These choices seem insignificant at first, but they build a foundation that no one can see until it's undeniable. Transformation grows in silence long before it's visible to the world. As you begin to change, you start to feel a shift within. The habits that once felt natural begin to feel heavy, out of place. The conversations you used to enjoy lose their spark. The environments that once comforted you begin to suffocate you. That's how you know you're growing, not because everything feels better, but because you can feel the weight of what no longer fits. The process isn't glamorous, it's disorienting, but that discomfort is proof that your old identity is dissolving and your new one is taking shape. Every part of you that resists is simply an echo of who you used to be, fighting to stay alive. Transformation demands honesty. It requires you to face the parts of yourself you've tried to hide, the fears, the failures, the regrets, and the patterns that keep you small. You can't become unrecognizable if you're still lying to yourself about what needs to change. Honesty is the fire that burns away illusion. It hurts, but it purifies. It exposes the truth, and that truth becomes the foundation of your new self. When you stop pretending, you stop wasting energy maintaining the version of you that no longer serves a purpose. You create space for authenticity to breathe. The most misunderstood part of transformation is that it's not linear. You won't wake up each day feeling stronger. Some days you'll feel like you're falling backward. You'll doubt yourself, question your choices, and feel like nothing is changing. But growth isn't measured in how smooth the path is. It's measured in how unwilling you are to give up. Every setback tests your resolve, and every recovery strengthens your character. The process is not about perfection, but about persistence. You learn to trust the process, to keep moving even when the progress is invisible. And that's when the real change begins to embed itself into who you are. Transformation also teaches you to outgrow your own excuses. You begin to see how much time you've lost negotiating with fear. The things you told yourself you couldn't do start to look small once you take action. The power you've been searching for externally begins to emerge internally. You stop saying, "I can't," and start asking, "What if I can?" That shift in language changes everything. You begin to take ownership of your limitations, not as excuses, but as challenges to overcome. You stop waiting for confidence and start building it through courage. You realize that confidence is the result of movement, not a prerequisite for it. As transformation deepens, solitude becomes sacred. You start to crave quiet, not as isolation, but as connection to yourself, your thoughts, and your purpose. The noise of the world fades as you rediscover your inner voice. You begin to notice how much of your past identity was shaped by external influence, by what people expected of you, by what society rewarded. In solitude, you return to your own rhythm. You begin to make decisions from intuition rather than obligation. You realize that you no longer need to be understood because you're finally beginning to understand yourself. Transformation also changes how you perceive time. You stop rushing. You stop forcing outcomes. You realize that real growth cannot be timed, it can only be nurtured. You begin to appreciate small victories, moments of self-control, moments of peace, moments where you choose differently. You start to see each day as an opportunity to practice becoming rather than performing. The pressure to prove yourself fades, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of alignment. You no longer chase transformation for recognition. You live it because it feels right. Through this process, your perspective on relationships changes as well. You start to notice who respects your growth and who resists it. The people who knew the old version of you may struggle to accept the new one. Some will distance themselves, and others will challenge your evolution. This is not a loss, it's a clearing. Transformation naturally attracts those who align with your new energy and repels those who don't. The more you embrace who you're becoming, the less you try to convince others to understand it. You begin to realize that growth is not meant to please anyone. It's meant to free you. Eventually, your reflection begins to look different. Not because your face has changed, but because your presence has. You carry yourself differently. You speak with intention. You walk with calm confidence. The world begins to treat you differently because you treat yourself differently. The same situations that once drained you now reveal your strength. The same fears that once paralyzed you now remind you of how far you've come. Transformation is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering the power, purpose, and potential that have been waiting beneath the surface all along.